Hello, my friend. How are you? I hope you are doing amazing and that you're keeping well and healthy. This is Heather. This is the Back to Me podcast. And this is Super Amazing Friday Celebrity Chat Day. Hooray! And that's the day that I get to talk to some really amazing people. And you guys know that it's partially selfish because I always come away with something new, some new tidbit, something to help me on my path. So the intention of the podcast is always to help you find something for you. And today's super amazing celebrity is Kathy, and I'm going to say it wrong.
Barthel.
Barthel. You do say the TH.
Well,
Oh,
you can, or, I love things French. This is terrible.
Barthel.
Yes, Barthel is lovely. But most people know me as Barthel.
Because I've been practicing my French. So,
Okay.
I'm working on it. And so Kathy and I are talking about lots of things today, obviously, because that's what I do. But we are going to talk about the power of being yourself. But Kathy, so tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you're helping people. And maybe even how you got into it, because that's interesting too.
Yeah. Well, just off the top, and thank you so much, Heather, for having me here. It's great energy already. I love this. I love the way you do this. But what I do for people is basically help them really align with and just get grounded in who they really are. By which, of course, I mean, who you are, what you're here to do in the world, regardless of pushback. No matter what anybody says, I always say to people, if you're not repelling someone, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Not everybody's going to just, align with you. And that's great. There's somebody for everybody. But that's a bit of a hurdle for us sometimes to get over, especially in business, but in life as well, because we often, how much of me should I show, and how do I balance this? I want to look credible. I want to, be respected for me, and that balance is kind of hard for a lot of people, and from time to time for all of us. So it's that, and I do that through video, through specifically helping women entrepreneurs and guys as well to really own that difference and then make that emotional connection through the camera, because video is a medium of intimacy. It's kind of like you're the horse with the blinders on,
Right.
It really forces you, this, you're so good on camera, Heather, you really got this. It's that intimate human to human connection. And for that to work, that kind of relationship, you've got to start with that relationship with you, and then branch out and connect with the person on the other side of the screen. So all aspects regarding video. And how I got into this, I don't know. My background is media and journalism and television. So I have well over 25 years experience interviewing all kinds of people, from actors, international designers, British royalty, a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, and also being on camera and, hosting and doing things on camera, but also in television, working on the production side in terms of producing, associate producing, some writing, casting, what they call chase producing, which I don't know, you might have an affinity for this, Heather. It's typically when you're trying to get guests for your show. You're going, oh gosh, we got to fill a spot. Oh no, we've got to line up so-and-so, and somebody just canceled, and oh no, that kind of thing. So kind of a fun thing to do, interesting thing to do if you want to live by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, no kidding.
So my background started in media as a photo editor in magazines. So I would direct photo shoots. I'd go to the States, New York, and Los Angeles sometimes to get the photography and interview photographers. Love that. I've always had that visual half of my brain, which is obviously the performance piece on camera, but also the photo editing. And then if you just went down my head, the other half, nasty image, would be the writer editor. So that's from the journalism, and I've written and edited so many different kinds of things in, feature magazine articles, online content, copy for TV. I wrote game show questions.
Really?
Yeah, about architecture and design for a really cool game show. So that's another kind of writing, kind of like a Jeopardy style question, only not, but that kind of thing, short and snappy little titles, for them in a really kind of clever, witty little question. So all kinds of things, but it's always been that mix of the visual half of me, performer half, and the interviewer half, which served me well in a media career, and certainly serves me well now as a video coach and trainer.
So you made an interesting, so holy moly, you interviewed famous people. You know how we are. We're like always starstruck. But it's yeah, I knew parts of your background, but I didn't know how varied it was. So that's amazing. And
Yes.
it's interesting, like there's a few comments that you've made that are just kind of piqued my interest. So I mean, helping people be themselves. And the last couple of years, everybody's gone on to video. And it's, if you're not used to it, I mean, people say, like, thank you for your generosity of saying that I am me, because I am, this is pretty much me, right?
Yeah.
But I was not like this when I started.
Hmm.
And I don't know if some people just never get to that place where they can feel,
Yeah.
where they can be themselves, or maybe there's not themselves in real life either,
Well,
IRL.
yeah, that's an interesting point because absolutely some people have evolved since the beginning of the pandemic. I've certainly noticed that. But of course, if we don't have somebody to point out certain things, we can repeat the same, little habits and things that are getting in the way of connecting with people. But yeah, it's something that that's interesting. The whole idea of being the same person on and off camera. That's something I talk to people about a lot. And when I started my business, because I have these sort of two halves of me, I started as a website copywriter for entrepreneurs and business owners, and then I added in writing coach and book editor for those who wanted to do a book. And what I used to say then is the same thing as I say now, is that consistency, right? And it's very difficult. We often feel we're playing a role, and there's so much self-judgment. And it's interesting when you say that they might not be that person off camera too, because thinking of all the I should say in person to person events we've gone to in the past, and hopefully will be again.
Right.
There's that people are coached at a networking event. Interview the other person, ask them about themselves, which is the best thing, right, to do to get you out of yourself and being natural, because then you respond to them as you normally would, without having to sort of process and get kind of tied up in your head and get too analytical about it. And in fact, that's one of the things that I talk to people about to get comfortable on camera. And that is, think of yourself as a host. When we have people over and you've gotten everything ready, you're all fixed up, your hair is just so, the food is out, the drinks are out, the appetizers are ready, the house is clean, everything's ready. As soon as you open that door, that person standing there is the focal point of everything. All you want to do as the host is make them feel comfortable, at ease. You just want to make sure they have a great experience. So if you think about that and the idea of, the element of interviewing somebody if you're at an event, when you go on camera, there's a lot of stuff I do with people to help them get out of their heads, get them calm and grounded. But once you've gotten that sorted, it's about thinking about that person. And when you are focused on being as welcoming as you can, as soon as that camera goes on, it's something that is palpable. This is what I love about video, Heather, and this is the power of it, is it's visceral. We feel
Right.
that coming through the lens. And so when you can think that way, my whole focus as I'm doing this video, this is, you thinking, you hypothetically, whomever that is, as you're putting that video together and you're recording, all I want to do is I want to make you who's watching this, and I know you're watching it, I want to make you comfortable. I want to create the best possible experience that I can, because I love what I do. I love helping people like you, but it's more than that. It's about this moment, this experience that I want to make you feel great. And as soon as we can do that, it's night and day different, and literally the viewer feels it. And that's, like I say, that's when the magic of video starts to happen. And it's not about perfection, right? It's not about
No.
other than you are.
If it was about perfection, I would need so much. Right. I was just remembering, I mean, I left the corporate world many years ago.
Yeah.
But do you remember that episode of Friends when Chandler and Monica, Chandler was getting like a promotion and they were having to hang out with his boss, and they had the work laugh, like ha 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 ha, like they had this work persona. This
Yeah,
is what I was like, oh my gosh, that's just not the way that I could ever work in the
exactly.
world.
Exactly. And it's like I always say to people with regard to video, like nobody wants you to be perfect. They just want you to be human. They don't want to be working with an automaton, like that's, I mean, yes, there's all this AI stuff. We're hearing deep fakes on video and all that. But most of us in business aren't going to be anywhere near that. So we have a tremendous opportunity to use video to literally deepen and make those human connections and make them deeper. And
And
you
you
know,
can expand reach, you can communicate messages, like
it's
all,
yeah, you know, yeah.
it's so good.
I think I'm preaching to the choir here with you, Heather.
I do go on to camera a lot compared to your average human being.
Yeah,
Although since COVID, maybe there's people who now are on it all the time.
yeah,
And I remember last year or maybe a year in, they started researching they called it Zoom fatigue. Do you remember
yes,
what that
yeah,
was? And I wondered if that was partly because people are so unaccustomed to being on camera
yeah,
that they they just didn't know how to be there and be comfortable and be relaxed. And if you don't like, when someone doesn't like something, they just don't do it or
yeah,
don't practice it.
yeah,
So they completely avoid it, which doesn't help you get any better if that's your goal, right? It's like,
yeah,
doesn't help you figure out who you are on camera, really.
exactly. And I think oftentimes too, people who are running the various meetings on camera, that on Zoom and whatnot, that is a whole other skill set, and it's something that I like to help people with too, because it is odd. We cut each other off on Zoom. It's a whole different, not meaning to, we talk over each other, and things happen. But if people understand how to, yes, show up as a flawed, imperfect, as we said earlier, perfectly imperfect human being, if you're able to do that, and again, that's being comfortable in your own skin and saying, hey, this is who I am. I'm not going to be any different than if I met you in person. And if you don't like me, obviously you're not going to do something so untoward that everybody's going to go, oh my gosh, turn off your camera. It's,
Well, there's been some of that though.
we're over that hump, hopefully. But the thing is, people who are running the meetings need to learn how to read those visual cues, need to learn how to hear the vocal cues, that we don't necessarily pay attention to as much, I think, when we're in person, because there's so much else going on and we can bow out of the meeting, we can do something else. But again, we're in this kind of bubble. But hopefully by now, if not at some point soon, people will start to be able to have sharper ears to that and to what people are saying, what the tone is, to look at the body language, and also to be able to actually show emotion through the camera, to show empathy, to be able to be comfortable enough to stop in the moment and go, hey guys, like to switch up the mood, to I love props, when I do videos, when I teach people. So, throw some crazy thing in, and
I was just looking around on my desk. Do I have something?
Mine are over there, and I'm going to be a bobbing head if I go and get something. So you may or may not want me to do that. But, some way to mix things up. But it requires more, a different, similar skill sets in part, but different ones and a different application. And I don't think, Zoom fatigue, and of course I'd be biased, but I don't think video fatigue or Zoom fatigue is necessarily a thing if you know how to manage the energy in the room through the
Right.
process.
We were talking when we first started. I wear headphones in all of my online meetings
Yeah,
because it helps me with that focus, because I don't have the person physically in front of me to help me focus on them.
yeah,
This helps me keep my focus from all of the distractions. And um, and running meetings, I have facilitated AGMs and facilitated meetings, and it is a different role that you step into when you are running those meetings. I've been called in the past Miss Bossy Pants.
But delivered with humor, I'm sure.
Yes, I own it fully. I am the oldest of 4 children. I have no problem muting people who are being disruptive and
Fantastic.
with kindness and with love, but I'm going to mute you now. Click.
Love it.
And recognizing the people in the room who are trying to, who have something to share, but they can't get in. They can't get in because of the size of the personalities of the other people. But I do that in real life too. Right. So, it is interesting. We always have to come up with words for things. Oh, I'm tired of Zoom meetings. Let's call it Zoom fatigue.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. But you bring up a good point. It's like anything else, in person or not. It's knowing the personalities and the styles of everybody in the room, communication styles and comfort styles and lots of things. And that's
and talking to a little black dot sometimes, because I do talk to a little black dot quite often. I have a friend who he was in television, and his strategy is he has a lizard that he puts right above his little black dot. Mine is right there. Blah, blah, blah. And he talks to the lizard.
Exactly.
So,
right?
Whatever works for you,
I love it. Exactly. And it's, well, when I tell people if they're doing recorded videos, of course, the other thing is to manage your own energy and to learn how to do a recording so that you don't have to memorize it or read from a horrible script, which is a kiss of death as far as I'm concerned, like the teleprompter or whatever version of that someone might want to use. But the idea of doing segments and then stopping, taking a break, changing it up, and then continuing to record. Obviously you're going to think about where was I, and you're going to hold that position a little bit and keep the video running and then continue. But there's ways to relax. But it does take, I have to say, to be honest, it does take something out of you. It is a different, even for somebody like me who loves it, it is a different thing, and it is intense, can be, in terms of talking to that dot and really bringing more maybe than you might think. Like when I teach people video, sometimes if, they're kind of reserved off camera and, it's hard for them to think, what do I do? How do I ramp things up? I'll have an exercise where they'll, give the same sentence 3 different times, increasing the intensity and the seemingly over the top delivery of it. And then they'll go back and I'll say, take a look at the takes of that. In other words, the little segments, the little recordings you did each time, and see which one feels like as natural, most energized, but not too much. And often it'll be the one where when they were recording it, it felt like they were way over the top, and exaggerating too much. But that's the weird thing about camera, is it kind of, it exaggerates things and it seems to kind of pull your energy. But it's something that you can manage. But you have to realize that sometimes, even me, I'm a natural extrovert, but there are days when I'm not 100% and I have to do things to sort of pump up my energy to kind of match what video demands of you, what the little black dot demands of you.
Right. And there are people that, even because my coach, he is an extrovert, and but he's very chill. Like he's very low key, has one of those deep voices. But when he's leading some of the group stuff, and he said it, he really has to do something to raise his energy up to help that whole group of people.
Exactly. This is, and this sometimes freaks clients out because they may not have had the background that I've had in TV and whatnot. But I will say, you don't have to be a performer, but there is a performative aspect to doing video. And it's just what we're saying, And again, though, if you think, I'm not doing this for self-aggrandizement, I'm not trying to be someone I'm not, as we said, it's about creating that experience for that viewer and helping them in some way. So oftentimes what we do with video is we want it to be something else. Well, if I'm working with or talking to, say, a professional speaker, but Kathy, I get the energy out of the crowd, out of the audience. I don't know, nothing coming from this stupid dot. I'm like, yeah, but you're comparing a gourd to a grape or to a piece of cake or something. I mean, they're two totally different things. So we have to respect the medium itself and, this platform. And then within that, we can play around. It's like parenting or anything else or working with teams. You've got to give people boundaries, just like when you run your meetings, right? They have to know, that's too far and she's going to cut off my video. She's going to do something, right? And so, but once we have those, within that, we can kind of push those walls a little. We can play and understand what are the elements I've got to work with, and then it becomes fun.
And I think sometimes there is that feeling like you have to be in a certain way, you were commenting on the script. So when I first started doing really technical, it's still there, a YouTube business series, and it was very technical information. So I had a script, but I never actually read it because I wanted the information correct, but I wanted it to be natural. So I would have it go by and I would kind of say what it said, but not really.
Yeah.
But we're not actors. Well, I'm not an actor.
I'd rather be me than act.
most of us are not actors. You're not trying to be a persona.
Yeah, you're not playing a role.
Yeah, your role should be just you. And it's interesting that you say that sometimes you have to turn the you up a little bit, to turn you up to convey what you need to convey. And it's, how do you, because I found my way here by myself, how do you help people figure that out who are so stiff and
yeah, there's a variety of things. I mean, this is what and from your work with your coaching and so on, I do it with interviewing and you do, and of course I do it with coaching with video, but the ability to be able to create what I call the bubble of comfort. I've called it that since I was in journalism, just that space where people feel really comfortable and they know that you have their back so much and you really, really just care to draw them out and help them be who they are. So one of the things that I do when I work with clients is try to tap into and make them feel comfortable. And I do a deep interview session oftentimes with a client in the beginning to get a sense of what are their expressions? What are their phrasings? How do they turn when they say certain things? How do they show when they want to give you something sort of seriously or whatever? And what makes them laugh and what engages them? What inspires them? I want to find out those things and get a more fulsome idea of what makes that person tick, because then that's what we're tapping into when we're bringing it on camera. And, oftentimes we're too close to our own genius, as they say, but also to our little quirks, and the things that we do. And I don't know how many times I've said, and you've probably said or heard someone say, but doesn't everybody do that? Oh, come on, that's not special, and we're too close to it, but we also often have that self-judgment. It's like, well, that won't fit, or that won't be accepted, or I don't know, if I should show that. But when I work with clients, that's ground zero, is to sort of find out what that is, to get to know that person. And then out of that, I also find out, of course, their story, what makes them unique, what their voice is. In other words, how they speak, not just, their voice, but their tone, their personality, how they express how they feel. And so creating that safe space and then pulling those things out gradually, I get to see sort of who this is. And, it's, as we know, if you want people to listen to something, whisper,
Right.
So it's not necessarily always about ramping it up. It's always about being grounded in what is that package that is you. And then when I know what that is, it's about, okay, what is it that you most want to say? And what lights you up about what you do? And pretty soon that person is feeling that sense of their own personal power, really, that comes from knowing who you are and having it perhaps reinforced from me a little. And then, it's about, okay, so what is it we're doing here? Who are you talking to? And then it's that other half of the same coin is we're getting you sorted. And then who is this person? Because this is this intimate conversation. So it's it's a couple of things, right? But it's finding out who that person is, because the last thing I'm ever going to do, any more than when I was editing people's copy, is try to change your voice and try to make you something different. It's about having that consistency and helping that person really feel that this is exactly who they need to be. It's just, then taking it and putting it across.
I know that you do this to help people on video, but this is like, people just need this in life,
Yes.
right? I mean, I could see this. I'm assuming I shouldn't assume. There must be more than just video that people come to you for, because just that knowing your uniqueness and being okay with that and expressing that to whoever you need to express it to, like that's a massive tool right there.
Yeah, it is. And thank you for bringing that up, because you know what it reminds me of? And I'm getting shivers before I even tell you this. I had a client who was just an amazing woman, big personality. She was great on stage, this and that. And we were actually at that time working on her copy, but the same thing tends to happen with video. And that is, I did this process with her and so on and everything. And she said, I thought I knew my messaging, but oh my gosh, wow, wow, wow. But what she said that just gave me the shivers was, she said, Kathy, you gave me my dignity back. And I was, here I am writing her copy. And, that was not something I expected to hear her say. And what she specifically meant was, and this is so integral to what we're talking about today, Heather, is, she was showing up one way in person, right? Everything was just shooting from every cylinder. She was just on. She was herself 100%. But they said to her, these were clients, they said, if I had seen your presence online, I never would have ever worked with you.
Right.
Never. And this just killed her inside, because it was like she was, that personality, that essence, that spirit was absolutely just missing in action. She was not there. And it's a weird split in who you are, to think that I'm figuring people are getting me online, and I'm basically a cipher. I'm just empty out there. I'm just not there. And it just did something to her. I think, like she said, she called it her dignity. But, it reminded me a little bit of actually the reason that I've done video coaching for a long time, even when I was doing copywriting. And as I say, it's a deep skill set, the writing and editing. But there was a time when I really had a full stop in my business, and I had to make a shift, because the way I put it was that even though I had these wonderful clients and I knew I was giving them great value and they were very happy, I realized that I was helping them get their voice out at the expense of my own.
Oh.
And that, because, I realized this space, video, the same as on camera, or I should say on stage, prior to the pandemic, and certainly hopefully soon again, is where I just feel so at home, and where who I am comes out more, and I feel more connected. So whereas when I would be writing, it was great. I loved interviewing people. That's one of my, like I say, one of my big skills, one of my passions. I love that. But the rest of the time I was by myself in my office writing and editing, and I wasn't with anybody. I wasn't collaborating the way I always had done in media, in all my media roles with teams and creative teams. And it was like all the rest was just sucked dry. And this was the only piece I had, was the writing and editing. So a whole piece of my spirit was missing, wasn't being heard, wasn't being expressed. So when she talked about her dignity, I think that was part of it. She was showing up one place, and the other place she was completely not there. She wasn't being seen.
Right.
And that whole thing of being yourself and being seen, like you say, I think it's so part of who we are as human beings. It's been a huge challenge, obviously, in the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a broken record all the time talking about it, but it's the reality that it has changed a lot of things, some for better, some for worse. And some are still trying to navigate how they want to be in that space now that things are not what they were before.
Yeah.
And this goes way back to something you said a while ago about understanding how your clients are and communicate and their quirks.
Yeah.
And I remember when masks mandates first came out, I was really upset. And it was only because I felt like a huge part of my connection with people was removed because I couldn't see their faces. And
Yeah.
this is how I like to interact. And this is how I read people. And this is how I know what's going on. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, it was like someone put blinders on me and I couldn't see. And it was just,
Yes.
I was very, it was very disruptive for me on like a very almost subconscious level, which it took me a while to recognize why I was so annoyed with the whole thing.
And why was that? And how did you get over it? What did you do?
I just had to move to a place of acceptance of this is like for the safety of everyone, they're asking us to wear masks and find new ways also because I tend to communicate a lot with my expressions. I think I do. I don't know. Doesn't everybody do that?
Yes.
But
Some more than others. I mean, yeah, same.
so, I knew that part of my communications to people were being lost. So I had to be more aware of, oh, they don't understand that face that I just made because they can't see it.
Yeah.
And do I find words now and are there things that I'm not seeing that will help me understand this person
Yeah.
in a different way? And it's very interesting exercise when you become cognizant of it that, oh my gosh, this changes everything. What do I do now? Right? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And
I was actually happy we had Zoom because I was like, I can see faces. Hooray.
absolutely. Well, it's funny, and this is something actually that is a very important part of what I do when I work with clients. So it's interesting. And that is tone of voice becomes, when you can't see this half of the face, right? Obviously the eyes expression becomes really, really a key communicating element. And then also the voice and the pauses and just how much you can pick up from voice. Because, when I was first interviewing people as a journalist, they were primarily phone interviews, and I'd be talking to someone in Hong Kong or somebody in England or wherever, or Toronto or whatever. And I would instantly pick up, and I'm sure you've done this in your coaching, you pick up, do they want to be here? Are they happy? Are they nervous? What are they like? It's just like a bunch of little sparks of stuff. And each thing is one of those elements and more. And you get it seconds, like a half a second, you get it immediately as soon as they start to speak on the phone. And you really get a sense, and then immediately you adjust your energy level and all of that. Like I say, I have a lot of energy and I'm an extrovert, but there's the other half of me that's very is that interviewer or whatever. But you and I've had people in sales say this, is this some kind of listening or some other kind of listening? And I'm like, I don't know. I just want the person to be comfortable, and I do it instinctively, But the fact that we didn't have that other half of people's face to read, I think actually has helped us all, because hopefully, maybe without realizing it, we paid more attention to what they're saying. We're listening a little more sharply, and we're paying more attention to the eyes, which are very expressive, right? But, oftentimes when we have all of this and whatever else, it's great, but some of those little nuances can get missed. And
Right.
when you're on camera, and especially when you're doing video, those are so important for telling a story or communicating a message. So it's interesting.
Do you do voice coaching too, as part of your as part of your
the coaching,
helping people get their messages across? And I mean, not everyone obviously is an entrepreneur and wanting to go on video and talk to the world, but there are instances where we're going to be on video for the foreseeable future in some instances, and still wanting to be able to communicate what you need to communicate, right?
Yeah.
And voice is interesting. This was, believe it or not, You may not believe this. I used to be very, very shy. Like,
Wow.
I wouldn't go into a store if I thought they were going to ask me if I needed help. That's how shy I was.
Wow.
Yes.
Mm.
And in university, it was like the worst possible thing you could ever imagine. I think it was fourth year university. We had a group project and the professor made us present
Yeah.
while he recorded it on video. This was like the 80s, right? So it was like a big video camera.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a hold of the podium with one hand and I just read my presentation. I thought I was going to die. I
Yeah.
really thought I was going to die. And I think the thing that changed for me, like grateful to him for making me do this, because then we had to go to his office and watch the video. Like I would have rather died. I would have rather dropped dead. But I went and watched the video and I was like, huh, I don't look as bad as I thought. Not that it was like suddenly I was like this extrovert,
Yeah.
jumping up on stages or anything, but it
Yeah.
was that beginning of, oh, maybe it's not as bad as I think. Maybe I'm not that bad. But I took many years later because I do have a very soft voice. I know that I have a very soft voice and it can go even softer. And it
Wow.
took me a long time to understand how to actually project. People
Yes.
say, you're not projecting. I'm like, yes, I am projecting, but I couldn't figure out how to. And
Yeah.
I took a course at George Brown actually on how to speak.
Yeah.
I didn't pass. Let's just say I didn't
Well, you
pass.
clearly learned, though.
I did learn. I
Yeah.
did learn. And I knew that I had a long way to go.
Yeah.
But modulation is a very big part
It,
of hearing how people are feeling and
absolutely.
tuning.
Absolutely. And yeah, to your question, I definitely help them with that. And it's one of the things that I love the most, because if someone says to me, in fact, I saw somebody's video this morning, they showed me something and said, I'm not comfortable with how I am on camera or whatever. And it was flat, the
Oh,
delivery
yeah.
was flat and the endings were all the same, essentially the same pitch, the way that the last word was. But it's all of those things. It's the pauses. There's so many uses of a pause and ways you can communicate, to set up something important, oh, she's paused, it's something we got to listen to, to later on so that they can absorb it, and it's like, yeah, because when people are nervous, of course, in life or on camera, they speak too quickly, right? And they jam too much in and nobody can absorb it. But there's so much you can do with your voice. And yeah, it's one of my favorite things to help people with. Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I think I've learned over time, but I guess it's through experience how to, and maybe I'm not as good as I think I am.
You know what? Actually, one of the things that I think, and I haven't known you all that long, but you have such a wonderful spirit and such a great sense of humor, and it reminds me of something else, and that is that, like what we're talking about. This is like life skills and life issues about wanting to be yourself and difficulties with that. But there are so many things here that people can use on video and in life, obviously,
Right.
to
Oh my
get
gosh.
better and
Yeah.
feel stronger. But one of them is a smile. A client I worked with, it was so funny because, he told me at some point, and more than once, but it's at a certain point in the training, it was so cute because he said, and I'm learning that smile thing. I was on the weekend, I was with my wife and some people, and we were sitting there, and I just thought, would hear, so I smiled as they were talking. And he said, and they just kind of came alive, and I felt better and so on and so forth. And it was so sweet. I was just, yes. But it's not that we don't smile, but it's that oftentimes, and we get this probably from meetings in the traditional work world, when we're working for somebody and we're in the meeting room, it's very easy when you're not on camera or you're not just one-on-one with somebody to kind of zone out and, you have that, what do they call it?
Bitchy resting face.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, darling. And that's going on, but there's enough people in the room. Maybe one person looks over and smirks and sees you with that face, but it's not a big deal. But in person, one-on-one, and on camera, it's a huge deal. And when there's nobody there but that dot, you got to know that somebody is there. So when you are smiling, or even just, the cure to the resting bitch face is to really have always just the littlest bit of a smile, right? Like not overtly, so you're like smiling in the middle of some really unfortunate story somebody's telling.
Right. Yeah. That would be my brother. My brother would do that.
Your bike fell off the hill and smashed, and your mom was mad. Oh, that was really great. Yeah. But maybe I should talk to him. He sounds interesting. But your brother. But that's the thing, right? Is these things are so important. And actually, this is something I learned, and probably you and a lot of people that are watching this, is when you are speaking to somebody, that old trick for, they use it for sales, they use it for anything, is when you're smiling, it brings warmth to your voice, right? And it's all these little cues that as human beings, oftentimes we know them and oftentimes we aren't really aware because it's so natural to do. But if we can think about those things, it makes a world of difference to the other person. And especially if you're coming at it thinking, I don't know about who I am, and maybe, is this too much of me or whatever. Once you do that, it's making the other person feel heard and seen. And of course, then they have an even better impression of you, right? Because you've made them feel that way.
Yeah, I think about if you like the person that you're speaking to is part of what they're listening to is it not a listening, it's a visual. So if you're like what was the teacher on Charlie Brown? Wah, 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 wah. Like just
the muted trumpet or whatever.
Yeah. It's like it's not perking up their ears to hear what you have to say. And even if you're saying something super important like emergency, call the ambulance, I need help, like what? It just goes through them. But also visual, and like if you're smiling, the person thinks you're engaging.
Yeah,
like
you're friendly.
And if you're like, seem interested, then it's gonna be more interesting. If you're interested, they're interested.
Exactly.
Usually.
Exactly. It's like the old networking thing, ask them about themselves. And then at the end of it, if somebody asks that person about you, they're like, they were so interesting. They were so amazing. And maybe you didn't get in barely 2 words.
Yes.
They're like, I want to connect with you. And you're like, I don't know what I said to you, but hey, great. I want to connect with you,
Yeah, I heard that story from one of the giants of networking whose name I can't remember. It's left my brain.
Yeah.
But famous people know him. That's what I know. Famous people know him. And he tells that story of he's had a conversation with someone in a bar and they didn't ask him one question about himself, but they told him that he was the most interesting man they'd ever met.
Exactly. And the other funny thing about this is that people often think, whether it's on camera or off camera, I'm not charismatic. I'm not one of those people who walks into a room and everybody notices. Charisma is all about showing passion for what you do, showing interest in that other person through smiling, listening, all the things we talked about. And that actually is going to make you naturally charismatic because you light up. You cannot possibly be this dour or whatever kind of a personage if you aren't doing those things. So that reads as charismatic because we think of a charismatic person as the person who kind of lights up the room, has that energy, has that warmth, And so whenever somebody says to me, Kathy, I'm not charismatic. How do I do this on camera? I'm not. Like, no, you are. We just need to tap into those things.
Yeah. I don't walk into a room going, hey, how's everybody doing? That's not my personality at all.
Right.
But I do end up talking to people and I find people fascinating. I mean, I just find people fascinating. Part of, like I said at the beginning, part of the podcast is people are so interesting.
Oh, yes.
There's always so much. There's always so much. And who's the most famous people you ever interviewed? Can you tell people? Is that allowed?
Well, I can tell you one who I don't know how much famous he is now, but certainly his mom and his aunt are. That was Viscount David Lindley, which is Queen Elizabeth's nephew. When I was writing about architecture and design, he had a bespoke furniture business.
Oh,
And
cool.
so, yeah, so that was interesting. It was funny because, of course, diligent researcher that I am, I looked at how do I address this individual? He's a member of the royal family, and I got all that right. And then he said, just call me David. It's like, okay.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you remember, there was wonderful, crazy movie called Naked Gun, and there were 2 or 3 with Canadian actor Leslie Nielsen. And I once had to reach out to him. Actually, it was when I was a photo editor, and I had to get him on side for this photo shoot we were doing and do a little interview. And I caught him when he was at the Playboy Mansion. It was funny. Somebody said to me, and he was lovely. He was great. I guess I found out later he was partially deaf. I don't know which ear, hopefully, I guess he obviously could hear me. But we had a great chat, and he was totally in, and, we had a little conversation. And somebody said to me, you must be a good interviewer if you could hold his attention while he was in the
Right.
because you're thinking grottos, babes by the pool, like, where was he?
That's hilarious.
That was funny. Yeah, he was a lovely guy. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That was just like my own personal curiosity. I was like, oh, she's probably talked to some really cool people.
Well, this is the funny thing, and it's working in television and in the media, you learn pretty quickly if you came in with, which I don't think I did, but you might come in thinking, oh, it's glamorous. At the end of the day, it's just about getting the thing done. Time is money. There's a clock ticking, and I'm there to do my job. They're there to do their job. If I have to work through the publicist and get past the hoops to get the interviewer, to get the photo shoot done, or get the person in the chair on set, that's my job. And they have a job, and maybe we're at odds a little bit. Maybe they have to, they got negotiating terms or something they need, or whatever it is, to be, so I can get that person where I need them for whatever I'm doing. But it's funny, because, yeah, glamorous it isn't. It's a heck of a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but I was at one point, I was an associate producer on this hair show. It was, one of those competitive shows, and we had all these stylists that had to compete.
Oh my gosh.
And, it wasn't my episode this particular day. And I saw my exec producer walking up to me, and she's like, Kathy. And I'm like, oh gosh, what does she want? What's going on? What did I do? And she's like, how would you like to be in this episode today? And I'm just like, okay, why, how? And of course, we had real people, sitting in the chairs for all of these competitions, and this lady that was supposed to come in that day, she had a migraine. So, and Heather, even since the pandemic, my goodness, video, this is why I'm against this dark background, because I'm brunette. Because I, on that show, had the worst hair of anybody on the set, anybody from Timbuktu to who knows where. And so it was just kind of like bing, like there was a light on my head. Because the episode was about hair extensions. So, oh my goodness, this was amazing. So there I find myself with this, Lady Godiva hair. And I'm just like, so a bunch of us go to this bar where the competitors were staying, after the cast, and not the cast, but the crew. And we're sitting there, and normally it'd be somebody like you with light hair, with blonde hair and stuff, that gets noticed in a dark bar, right? And I'm starting to get hit on, and I'm a woman getting hit on, but this is not what normally happens to me. But it's the hair, and I had this, amazing hair. But of course, the non-glamorous aspect of TV is that I had to be up at 5 or 6 in the morning to get back on set. I didn't have time to take all this stuff out. So I slept on this stuff, this is going to be weird. The next day it was great. But that day on set, when I was getting all this stuff, the poor guy, he actually ended up winning, the guy whose chair I sat in. But not from lack of me annoying the heck out of him, because I'm throwing up questions as he's trying to be on set and do my hair. Being a little, I have a show called The B.R.A.T show. I was doing that. And it was just, and I was determined to have a center part. I finally, all these years later, have a side part. But I was determined to have a center part, and he wanted to have a side part. And then the judges were like, we really like it, but what's with the center part? And, it's this horrible associate producer woman who forced me. But it's that kind of crazy stuff, right? Where it's like, we got to shoot this episode today. Everybody's here, the set's here, the crew's here, and we don't have somebody in the chair, literally. So that's the kind of flying by the seat of your pants part of of working in media that I actually love. I guess it's that adrenaline rush, you know. And at the end of the day, that's the wonderful thing, that nobody's any the wiser, right?
Well, it's funny. I mean, first of all, hilarious. It's the hair. They're hitting on the hair, right? I'm the same person. They're now hitting on the hair,
Yep.
which I don't know if that's good or bad. Like, what does that say?
I know. Yeah.
So we're talking about, famous people and this maybe would help people. They're just people.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how famous they are, they're just a person. No matter how big they are,
Yeah.
President of the United States, whatever, all these
Yeah.
people are just people.
Yeah.
And the people that you talk to on camera are just people.
Exactly.
Or even on the phone. These are all just people.
Oh, yeah.
And people, for the most part, I think, are very similar. Yeah, everybody's got quirks.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
yeah,
we're all pretty similar. And I think if people can get a hold of that,
yeah,
maybe you won't get so starstruck when you run into somebody on the street. But
well, it's true. And the other thing, we are so similar, and is that common humanity for sure. The funny thing that I've always noticed, and I don't know if you've come across this with people you've met, but the bigger they are, so to speak, the better known they are, oftentimes the more grounded they are. You know, if you're meeting the local weather person or whomever it is, sometimes you get, you run into them at the mall or whatever, and you get this feeling that they're like kind of waiting to be noticed, like, and you're just like, But, I interviewed this international designer. His name is Ross Lovegrove, and he's from Wales. And I remember, setting everything up for the interview and so on, and him emailing me back. And I was trying to, book a time that was convenient to him, of course, time differences and whatever involved. And he emailed me back and he said, "Wake up gently, Kathy. And when you feel like it, do call." And I was just like reading this in an email, like, what do I do with that?
Wake up gently.
And I'm like, wow. And I remember for a long time I had that stuck up in my office. He's so chill. He's like, and I'm kind of like, but I know, but can you just give me a time? Like, because I do need to. But he was just so comfortable in his own skin. He wasn't like fretting over a lot of stuff. He was very grounded and a joy to interview. But, it's, oftentimes I think it's because these people that we think the bigger they are, the more whatever, the more difficult, it's that they've been through all those other stages, right? They're still in it, and they probably learned those lessons. They've had the humbling experiences, and for whatever other reasons, they're pretty grounded,
I would think that they would have to find their way to being grounded. Otherwise, like, who knows where you would at, like, you would just be unsettled all of the time. And I guess if you become big enough, if you're not grounded, that's when you end up in the tabloids all the time.
This is the thing, right? Exactly. Exactly. And I have tremendous, as we both do, empathy for that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. They're always after people, right?
Yeah. But I mean, that's why, I don't know about you, but I would not want to be famous like that.
I don't need to be famous. I have no need to be famous.
No.
I just have a need to help people
Like
be better. Be better at whatever they want to be better at.
Yeah.
And achieve whatever they want to achieve. And all of the ways to help people always has to involve communications. Absolutely. Which is why I think what you do is so valuable for people, right? So amazing. And your experiences are so cool. And not to get starstruck. I don't run up to famous people on the street.
Yeah.
I never do it. Because I've been in Yorkville, downtown Toronto. I've seen them. I'm just like, oh yeah, there's so-and-so. But I won't be like, click, click, click. I don't run after them. I just think it's interesting to see them. But all that aside, do you have any words of wisdom, final words of wisdom for people?
Yeah. With regard to being who you are and really owning that, I would say that one of the things that I've learned, and it took me a long time to learn, I think it's an integral part of it, is if you don't already have this, working on that compassion for yourself piece of it. I have to say, this sounds crazy, but there was a point where I actually had to look up, I was a curious journalist, but more than that, I had to look up what actually self-love meant, because I didn't really know. It sounds ridiculous, but I didn't really understand it. And when I cottoned on to the idea that it had a great deal to do with compassion for yourself, something clicked, and it was like, yeah, we have so much compassion and understanding for strangers, let alone close friends and family, if they make a faux pas or they think whatever it is that's imperfect about them. And we're always making allowances and loving them and supporting them. But we don't necessarily turn that onto ourselves. And so I think the idea of being present and being able to anchor in who you are, this is what also would keep it from potentially out of insecurity, potentially, veering into a little ego thing where, do I look good? I don't know what I mean. You kind of get caught up in your head. Yeah. So if you can really remember to anchor in that, and that's part of the grounding. There's exercises I do with people, but that's neither here nor there, really, to, at this point, just to remember to care for yourself, to give yourself a mental or physical hug and think, you're absolutely amazing. You really are. And think about specifics. When my daughter was little, she used to love that I didn't just go, oh, that was a wonderful paper you wrote. She said, you were really particular. You would say, I loved how you opened with this and you did that and whatever. Think about those things about yourself, all those wonderful little quirky things. There's that exercise where you ask, 3 or 4 or 5 of your closest friends or business associates to tell you a couple of words or a short phrase that describes you. Mm-hmm. That's always, kind of one of those chestnut things to do, but to have that compassion, to nurture that, and then to also remember to get beyond yourself. If you're thinking about being on camera or just in the world and you want to be less self-conscious, is like we've said, focus on what am I doing for that person? How am I making them feel? How am I creating an experience right now for them to really feel fully seen and heard and so on? Because once you do that, as I say, they feel it and it just goes right back to you, right? It boomerangs right back to you. And you get that feeling of having done that for them, which of course increases your sense of self in a great, great way. And it's just kind of that wonderful circle of caring, and support that happens. And it happens on its own. You don't have to do anything. That's the thing. You don't have to force it. It's never about forcing. It's about just grounding in this and going, giving yourself that hug and saying,
that's
you're
so
okay,
good.
That's
so good. I think that's true. I think that's very, very true. I mean, self-compassion and self-acceptance is so key to feeling okay in the world in general, right? So good. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. And the final words of wisdom are like the cherry on top.
Thank you, Heather. It's been a blast.
So much. I can't wait to see more of what's going on with you. And my friends, stay tuned. There's more stuff coming your way. If you want to get Kathy, her contact information is in all the show notes everywhere that you're going to watch or listen to this. You can find a way to connect with Kathy. And of course, always, if you want to connect with me, just send me a message. I would love to chat with you as well. Take care, my friends. Thank you, Kathy. Everybody.